Carson and Tahoe Lumber and Fluming Company No. 1 Glenbrook is a narrow-gauge 260 Mogul that was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in March of 1875. It is preserved at the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Carson City, Nevada, where it operates under steam for special events. The No. 1 Glenbrook, along with two other 260 Moguls, No. 2 Tahoe and No. 3, hauled lumber and cordwood from the sawmills at Glenbrook on the shores of Lake Tahoe to the top of Spooner Summit. At the summit, loads were transferred from flat cars into a V-flume that carried the wood and lumber to a huge yard at the south end of Carson City. The cordwood and timbers were then hauled by the Virginian truckee to the Comstock, where the timbers were used for mining and milling purposes, and the cordwood fed into boilers and heating stoves. Over the steep grades that can reach as high as 4% with two switchbacks, either locomotive could pull 6 flat cars of lumber to the summit, and trains sometimes used 12 cars with one engine pulling and the other pushing. Additionally, the Bliss Family, owners of the Carson and Tahoe Lumber and Fluming Company, purchased the Lake Valley Railroad in Baijiu, California in 1886. It was a logging railway that ran from Baijiu on the south shore of Lake Tahoe through the forest to Mayers. This line hauled logs to the lake shore, where they were chained together to form rafts that steamboats pulled to the sawmills at Glenbrook. It was theorized that No. 1 Glenbrook was occasionally used on this line as well. After the 060 Porter locomotive Santa Cruz was purchased, 260 engine No. 3 was moved to Baijiu soon afterwards and was briefly given the No. 1, which made the Glenbrook receive a No. 4. By 1898, lumber operations on the Carson and Tahoe Lumber and Fluming Company ended as the forests were extensively cut. Glenbrook and No. 3 were moved to the north shore of Lake Tahoe, Tahoe City, California. With the closure of the railroad that once based out of Glenbrook, Nevada, the equipment was used to build a new railroad about 16 miles north from Tahoe City to the Southern Pacific Railroad Station at Truckee, California. Engines No. 2 and No. 4 were sold to the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad, while the Glenbrook and No. 3 were retained. The new line opened on May 1st, 1900, called the Lake Tahoe Railway and Transportation Company. The railroad served lumber mills and transported tourists to Lake Tahoe. Glenbrook occasionally handled tourist trains that ran out onto a pier where steamships, including the steamship Tahoe, were docked. Fast forward to October 16, 1925, the Lake Tahoe Railway and Transportation Company were leased to the Southern Pacific Railroad, which converted the line to standard gauge from late 1925 into May 15, 1926. The Southern Pacific bought the line and ran it until they abandoned the Lake Tahoe branch on November 10, 1943 for the war effort. As for the narrow gauge engines on the Lake Tahoe Railway and Transportation, they were sold to the Southern Pacific and scrapped in Sacramento in 1926 and 1927. For some reason, the Bliss family retained the Glenbrook likely for preservation purposes, but it never happened. In 1937, the Glenbrook was sold to the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad to supply parts for its twin, Tahoe. The Tahoe No. 5 would eventually be sold to Hollywood Studios in 1940. The Glenbrook languished at the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Grass Valley Yard for a few years until the railroad went out of business in 1942. It was thought that the Glenbrook might finally be scrapped. Hope Bliss feared that the Glenbrook might be scrapped for the war effort and convinced her family to repurchase the historic Mogul. In June of 1943, the Glenbrook was transported on a flat car from Colfax to Carson City. When the Glenbrook returned to Nevada, it was surprisingly in the same condition when it was sold back in 1937. The family then donated the locomotive to the Nevada State Museum in Carson City, where it became the state of Nevada's first railroad artifact. The locomotive remained outside the building on public display for nearly 40 years. In 1981, the Glenbrook was moved to the Nevada State Railroad Museum for restoration. Restoration work started and stopped several times, but thanks to a grant from a foundation in 2010, the restoration shop completed restoration of the Glenbrook to its 1875 appearance. Nearly 90 years after the last steam-up on the Lake Tahoe Railway and Transportation Company, the Glenbrook was unveiled to the public on May 23, 2015. The No. 1 260 Mogul would then make appearances at special events at the Nevada State Railroad Museum. In August of 2021, the Glenbrook visited the Cumbers and Toltec Scenic Railroad for their Victorian Iron Horse Roundup celebration along with Eureka Palestine No. 4, Eureka. There, both of the 1875 engines made several double-header trips on the line. Even on August 28th, when the Eureka had a mechanical problem and couldn't go on while climbing the grade to Coomera's Pass, Glenbrook worked its hardest pushing the Eureka in the 3-car passenger train. Unfortunately, the grade was too much for the Glenbrook to handle. On the 4th of July weekend of 2022, the Nevada State Railroad Museum of Carson City was hosting its Great Western Steam Up event in 150 years of the completion of the Virginia and Truckee Railroad. For the first time since 1899, Glenbrook and Tahoe were steamed up together during their reunion. Over the weekend, Glenbrook hauled a train of happy passengers from the beginning into the end, while the Tahoe performed demonstration runs. There were also many visitors of the event, such as Virginia and Truckee number 12 Genoa, number 21 J.W. Bowker, and also Eureka number 4. In 2025, Glenbrook, along with engines number 5 Tahoe, number 4 Eureka, number 22 Inyo, and number 21 J.W. Bowker, turned 150 years old. For celebration, Glenbrook and Tahoe will make double-header runs at the Carson City Railroad Museum during the 4th of July weekend. The Glenbrook plays a crucial role in Nevada and Lake Tahoe's history and continues to carry history for years to come.